The honourable member for Montmagny-Lillet, Kamoska, Rivière-du-Loup. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Very quickly, I would like to congratulate the member for Scarborough-Guildwood for his initiatives. I think we have been waiting for nearly 2 years for a response from the government, and I liked what he said about the bill and the royal assent, but in there were a lot of recommendations in the report. I don't want to deal with all of them in connection with the royal assent, but would he agree to improve the bill in some ways in committee? For example, the mechanism for appointing an independent ombudsman to receive complaints. He says that the Foreign Affairs Minister would receive the complaints. Would this not be a bit of a conflict of interest, and would he be open to examining this further? Of course, we have to wait for the question of the royal recommendation.
First of all, I want to thank the bloc member for the support of the bloc in this bill. If the honourable member can show us how we can avoid a royal recommendation by the appointment of an ombudsman, I'd be on it in a heartbeat. That would be the critical question. I think he's absolutely right that there is a bit of a conflict of interest, or possibly not as much enthusiasm on the part of a minister to pursue complaints as there might be on the part of an ombudsman. I would prefer an independent officer of Parliament to be the person that has the responsibility for the prosecution of this bill. So I agree with you totally. If we could do it, I'd do it. And if you can propose an amendment which will meet the guidelines of the Speaker, then I'll be happy to consider that.
Questions and comments? The honourable member from London North Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the comments that have been made on this issue. In areas, for instance, a decade ago in Africa, we had difficulties with certain Canadian companies that were involved and under dubious means. And what ended up happening was that a split developed between our foreign diplomacy efforts from Foreign Affairs, as opposed to something like CETA, which was a development effort, which was trying to do work in a region and was finding their work undermined by some of these companies. I guess my question to the member would be, how do you see that squaring up under this? I'm interested in how those controls would work, so groups like CETA who invest in those areas where these companies are having a detrimental effect would be able to be protected and their own investments protected.
The honourable member from Scarborough-Guildwood.
That's just exactly the kind of question that we should be asking in this chamber, and I thank the honourable member for a very fine question. I think that if you stand back, if you wind the lens back, Canada has a confused moral stance. We don't know whether we're doing development one day and defense the next day, and we want people to vote for us at the UN, and we want to have our sphere of interests protected as well, our economic interests. And so certain companies operating in Africa, our economic interests clash with our moral responsibilities. CETA was discharging its sense of a moral responsibility, yet this was a corporation that was chartered in Canada, sold on the Canadian Stock Exchange, and was operating in a fashion which, frankly, lacked certain levels of morality. So I think that by publishing these guidelines, everybody's bound by it. CETA's bound by it, international trade's bound by it, and Foreign Affairs is bound by it. It will be the law of Canada. I think in some respects it resolves certain elements of moral ambiguity.
A 30-second question, the honourable member from Dartmouth-Cole Harbour.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I know the commitment that the member from Scarborough-Guildwood has to international affairs. I also know he's familiar with the NGOs and faith-based organizations that are involved in supporting. I wonder if he could just run through some of the organizations like CCIC and others that would be supportive of this bill.
Honourable member from Scarborough-Guildwood.
Well, just before our debate, Madam Speaker, I received an email from a Catholic-based organization for Development and Peace, and they'd delivered to one of your NDP colleagues 1,800 names on a petition to support this kind of initiative. So CCIC, Mining Watch, even the World Bank and OECD have their own guidelines. So I'm expecting that there will be an enormous amount of support for this bill from a wide variety of sources. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Reprise du débat.
Resuming debate.
Honourable